The distress signal came through in broken fragments. Captain Elena Voss stood in the command center of the orbital station, her fingers pressed against the cold metal console. The message was faint, crackling with interference, but the words were unmistakable. Colony 7. Under attack. They are taking the children. Please. Anyone. Then silence. Elena's chest tightened. Colony 7 was a research outpost on the edge of human space. 300 people lived there. Scientists, farmers, teachers, families. It was one of the peaceful settlements, far from any conflict zone. They had no weapons, no military presence. They were harmless. Replay it, Elena said, her voice steady but cold. The communications officer, a young man named Chen, nodded and ran the message again. This time, Elena listened not to the words but to the background sounds. Screams, the hum of unknown engines. A child crying? How long ago did this come through? She asked. 17 minutes, Chen replied. We tried to respond, but there's no signal now. The entire colony went dark. Elena turned to face the room. A dozen officers stared back at her, their faces tight with worry. She knew what they were thinking. The frontier colonies were always vulnerable. Pirates, rogue factions, resource raiders. But this felt different. The fear in that voice was not just desperation. It was horror. Get me fleet command, Elena ordered, and pull up the nearest patrol routes. I want to know who was close enough to respond. Chen worked quickly, his hands moving across the console. A map appeared on the main screen, showing the surrounding sectors. Colony 7 blinked red at the edge. The nearest human ship was 4 hours away. Too far. Too late, ma'am, Chen said quietly. There's something else. Elena stepped closer. Show me. He brought up a new image. It was grainy, pulled from a satellite near the colony. The footage was only a few seconds long, but it was enough. A fleet of ships, sleek and dark, hovering above the colony. They were not human. The design was strange, angular, covered in patterns that looked like scars. And beneath them, on the ground, figures moved in organized lines. They were herding people. Elena's jaw clenched. She had seen raids before. She had seen cruelty. But this was methodical, calculated. They were not looting. They were harvesting. Who are they? One of the officers asked. I don't know, Elena said. But they chose that colony for a reason. No defenses. No way to fight back. They wanted easy prey. She turned away from the screen and walked toward the observation window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, those ships were still moving. Still hunting. Ma'am, fleet command is online, Chen said. Elena returned to the console. The face of Admiral Constantine appeared on the screen. He was older, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had fought in the border wars. He knew loss. Captain Voss, he said. I saw the report. We're scrambling a response team, but it will take time. They don't have time, Elena said, her voice sharp. Those people are already gone. We need to find out where they were taken and why. Constantine nodded slowly. Agreed, but we don't know who we're dealing with. No one in the surrounding sectors has claimed responsibility. No demands have been made. It's like they just appeared. Elena felt a cold anger settling in her chest. They didn't just appear, Admiral. They planned this. They knew Colony 7 was defenseless. They knew no one would reach them in time. Then we need to be ready for the next one, Constantine said. Because if this was a test, they'll do it again. The transmission ended. Elena stood in the quiet hum of the command center, her mind racing. Colony 7 was gone, but whoever took them made a mistake. They assumed no one would come. They assumed Earth would accept the loss and move on. They were wrong. Elena turned to her crew. I want full analysis on that footage. Ship designs, movement patterns, anything that tells us where they came from. And I want a list of every vulnerable colony within 10 jumps of here. If they hit another one, we need to know before it happens. Yes, ma'am, the team replied in unison. As they worked, Elena returned to the observation window. She thought about the voice in that message. The desperation, the fear. She thought about the children being taken, their families helpless to stop it. Humanity had spread across the stars, searching for peace, for new beginnings. But the universe was not kind to the weak, and those who saw kindness as weakness always struck first, but they had never faced Earth when it was angry. Elena's reflection stared back at her from the glass, her expression hard and unyielding. She had spent years protecting the frontier, keeping the colonies safe from threats they never saw coming. She had lost friends, lost entire crews to the darkness between the stars. But this was different. This was personal. "Captain," Chen called out, "we're getting reports from other sectors. 3 more colonies went silent in the last hour. Same pattern. No warning. No survivors." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. 4 colonies. Hundreds of people. And still no one knew who was responsible. She turned back to her crew. "Send a priority message to every human settlement within 50 light years. Tell them to go dark. No signals, no lights. Make themselves invisible. And then?" Chen asked. Elena's voice was cold and calm. "And then we find the ones who did this. And we show them what happens when you hunt the helpless." The room fell silent. Outside, the stars seemed dimmer now, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Somewhere in that darkness, a predator was moving. But they had made one mistake. They had given Earth a reason to become dangerous. 3 days passed with no new attacks. The silence was worse than the chaos. Elena barely slept, spending every waking moment analyzing the data from Colony 7. Her team worked around the clock, pulling apart every detail, every fragment of information. Then, on the 4th day, they found something. "Captain." "You need to see this," said Lieutenant Okafor, the station's intelligence analyst. She was sharp, methodical, and rarely showed emotion. But now her hands were shaking. Elena crossed the room quickly. "What is it?" Okafor pulled up a holographic display. It showed the route taken by the unknown ships after they left Colony 7. The trail was faint, hidden beneath layers of interference, but it was there. "They didn't just disappear," Okafor said. "They followed a specific path. And look where it leads." The map zoomed out, tracing the route across several systems. It ended at a station, a massive structure orbiting a dead planet in unclaimed space. The station was enormous, larger than anything humanity had built. And surrounding it were dozens of ships. "The same ships from Colony 7. What is that place?" Elena asked. "Unknown," Okafor replied. "It's not on any of our charts. But I ran a deep scan, and there's heavy activity. Power signatures, heat sources, movement. Whatever it is, it's operational. And it's been there for a long time." Elena stared at the image, her mind working through the implications. "How long?" "At least 20 years, maybe more," Okafor said. "It was built slowly, quietly. No one noticed because it's in a dead zone. No resources, no strategic value. Nothing worth claiming. Until now," Elena said quietly. She leaned closer to the display, studying the station's structure. It had docking bays, holding cells, processing centers. It was designed for one purpose: to take people and keep them. "They've been doing this for years," Elena said, her voice low and filled with anger. "Colony 7 wasn't the first. It was just the first time we noticed," Okafor nodded grimly. "I cross-referenced missing colony reports over the last decade. 15 settlements went dark with no explanation. We assumed equipment failure, natural disasters, pirate raids. But if you look at the pattern, they're all the same." Remote, defenseless, ignored. Elena felt sick. 15 colonies. Thousands of people. Gone. And no one had connected the pieces because no one thought to look. "Who are they?" Elena asked. "That's the part you're not going to like," Okafor said. She pulled up another file. "I found fragments of a transmission near the station. It took time to decrypt, but I got enough. They call themselves the Salvers. They're not a military force. They're traders." Elena's blood went cold. "Traders?" "They buy and sell people," Okafor said, her voice tight with disgust. "Humans are rare in this part of space. Intelligent, adaptable, easy to train. Apparently we're valuable. The Salvers find isolated colonies, take everyone, and sell them to the highest bidder. No witnesses, no evidence. Just supply and demand." The room felt smaller suddenly. Elena's hands curled into fists. She had faced enemies before. Warlords, extremists, desperate men driven by hate or greed. But this was something else. This was industrial, calculated, cold. "How many species are involved?" Elena asked. "At least 7 that we can confirm," Okafor said. "Maybe more. The Salvers are well connected. They have buyers across multiple sectors. And they've been operating unchecked because no one realized it was happening." Elena turned away from the display, her mind racing. This was not a war. It was not even a raid. It was a business, and humanity had become a product. "Get me Admiral Constantine," Elena said. Minutes later, the Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than before, as if the weight of the situation had aged him overnight. "Captain," he said, "I heard the report. I've been briefing the Council. They're not handling it well. We need to move now, Elena said, her voice sharp. Every day we wait, more people are being taken. We know where the station is. We know what they're doing. We can stop this. Constantine's expression darkened. It's not that simple. The station is in unclaimed space. Legally, we have no jurisdiction. And if we go in without authorization, we risk starting a war with species we've never even met. Elena's jaw tightened. They've already started a war, Admiral. They just didn't tell us. I agree, Constantine said quietly. But the Council is afraid. They don't want to provoke a conflict we can't win. They want more time, more information. Time is what those people don't have, Elena said. We're not talking about resources or territory. We're talking about lives, human lives. And if we do nothing, we're telling the galaxy that we're easy targets, that they can take from us without consequence. Constantine was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. I'll push the Council, but I need you to prepare a response plan. Something clean, precise. Show them we can do this without sparking a galactic incident. Elena nodded. I'll have it ready in 12 hours. The transmission ended. Elena stood alone in the command center, staring at the map of the station. It loomed on the screen like a wound, dark and festering. She thought about the people inside. The families from Colony 7, the settlers from the other lost colonies. Were they still alive? Were they afraid? Did they know anyone was coming? Captain, Jen said quietly. What do we do? Elena turned to face her crew. They were watching her, waiting. They trusted her. They believed she had a plan. We're going to that station, Elena said, and we're going to bring our people home. But we're not going in blind. We need to know everything. Layout, defenses, guard rotations, and we need to find out who's buying. Because when we're done with the salvors, we're going after the buyers too. Her crew nodded, determination hardening their faces. One more thing, Elena said. The salvors targeted the helpless because they thought no one would fight back. They thought we were weak. Let's show them what happens when Earth gets angry. The room erupted in quiet, grim agreement. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the command center, something else was burning. Justice. The plan took shape over the next 2 days. Elena worked with a team of strategists, engineers, and intelligence officers, piecing together a response that was both surgical and devastating. They called it Operation Retrieval. The goal was simple. Infiltrate the salvor station, free the captives, and destroy the facility. But the execution was anything but simple. The station has 60 ships docked at any given time, Okafor explained, pointing to the holographic display. Most are small transports, but there are at least 10 warships providing security. They're not military grade, but they're well armed. We can't fight our way through. Then we don't fight, Elena said. We use their own system against them. She gestured to the map. The salvors operate like a business. That means they have schedules, protocols, shipments. If we can mimic one of their transports, we can dock without raising alarms. Lieutenant Marquez, the station's chief engineer, leaned forward. We'd need to replicate their ship signatures perfectly. One wrong frequency and they'll know something's off. We have the data from Colony 7, Elena said. Their ships left traces. We can clone the signature and modify one of our stealth transports to match their profile. Okafor nodded slowly. It could work, but once we're inside, we'll only have a narrow window. The moment they realize something's wrong, they'll lock down the station. Then we make every second count, Elena said. She turned to the tactical display, highlighting specific sections of the station. Teams of 6. 3 objectives. First team locates and extracts the captives. Second team plants charges on the power core. Third team secures the docking bay and prepares for evac. We move fast, we move quiet, and we leave nothing behind. What about the buyers? Chen asked. If they're connected to multiple species, taking down the salvors might just scatter them. Elena's expression darkened. That's why we're taking their data. Every transaction, every contact, every buyer, we'll expose the entire network. Let the galaxy know what's happening, and then we'll hunt down every single one of them. The room fell silent. It was a bold plan, dangerous, but it was also the only chance they had. Admiral Constantine approved the mission, Elena said. We launch in 18 hours. Get some rest. You're going to need it. The team dispersed, moving with quiet urgency. Elena remained in the command center, staring at the station on the screen. She ran through the plan again and again, searching for weaknesses, for flaws. Every detail had to be perfect. One mistake and they would lose everything. 18 hours later, the modified transport launched from the orbital station. It was sleek and dark, its hull repainted to match Salvor designs. Inside, Elena sat with her team, checking their equipment one last time. They wore light armor, designed for speed and silence. Each carried a compact rifle, a sidearm, and a pack of breaching charges. Everyone clear on their roles? Elena asked, nods all around. They were ready. The transport moved through the void, following the route the Salvors had taken. As they approached the station, the massive structure filled the viewport. It was even larger up close, a sprawling network of modules and docking arms. Ships moved in and out like insects around a hive. Signal coming in, Chen said, his voice tense. They're requesting identification. Elena nodded to Marquez, who sent the cloned signature. For a long moment there was silence. Elena's hand hovered near her sidearm, ready for anything. Then the reply came through. Docking clearance granted. Proceed to Bay 7. Elena let out a slow breath. We're in. The transport glided into the docking bay, settling onto the platform with a soft hiss. The airlock cycled open and Elena stepped out first, her team close behind. The bay was dimly lit, filled with crates and equipment. A few Salvor workers moved in the distance, but none paid them any attention. Move, Elena whispered. They split into their assigned teams, melting into the shadows. Elena led the extraction team, following the station's layout toward the holding cells. The corridors were narrow and cold, lined with pipes and cables. The air smelled of oil and something else. Fear. They reached the cell block without incident. Elena signaled for her team to hold position while she accessed the door controls. The lock was simple, designed to keep prisoners in, not intruders out. It clicked open. Inside, the cells were packed. Dozens of people, maybe more, huddled together in the dim light. They looked up as Elena entered, their faces hollow and afraid. We're here to get you out, Elena said quietly. Stay calm and follow us. A woman stepped forward, her eyes wide. Are you real? Are you really here? Yes, Elena said. But we need to move now. The extraction began. Elena's team guided the captives through the corridors, moving in tight formation. They could hear the stations hum around them, the distant voices of Salvor guards, the clang of metal. Everything was going according to plan. Then the alarms went off. Red lights flashed through the corridors. A blaring siren echoed through the station. Elena's heart sank. What happened? She hissed into her comm. Marquez's voice crackled back. Second team was spotted near the power core. They're sending security. We're compromised. Elena cursed under her breath. All teams accelerate extraction. We're out of time. They moved faster now, no longer worrying about stealth. The captives stumbled along, fear driving them forward. Behind them, Elena could hear the sound of boots, shouts, the snap of weapon fire. Keep moving, she shouted. They reached the docking bay just as the first wave of Salvor guards appeared. Elena's team opened fire, covering the captives as they scrambled onto the transport. The bay erupted in chaos, gunfire echoing off the metal walls. Everyone on board, Elena yelled. The last captive climbed inside. Elena turned to follow, but a blast of energy slammed into the wall beside her, showering her with sparks. She dove behind a crate, firing back at the advancing guards. Captain, we need to go, Chen shouted from the transport. Not yet, Elena replied. Where's the second team? Still inside. They're pinned down. Elena's chest tightened. She looked at the transport, filled with the people they had saved. Then she looked back at the corridor where her people were fighting. The choice was impossible, but she knew what had to be done. Elena made the call that would haunt her forever. Chen, take the transport and get those people out of here. Now. Captain, we can't leave you, Chen protested, his voice breaking through the comm. That's an order, Elena said, her voice hard. Get them to safety. We'll find another way out. The transport's engines roared to life. Elena watched it lift off, watched it clear the docking bay and disappear into the black. Then she turned back to the fight. Okafor, status on Team 2? Elena said into her comm, pressing herself against a wall as energy blasts scorched the air around her. They're trapped near the power core, Okafor replied. Her voice was strained. Salvors have them surrounded. They're requesting immediate support. Elena's team was down to 4 now. 4 against an entire station. The math was simple and brutal. Fall back to my position, Elena ordered. We regroup and push to Team 2 together. Her remaining soldiers moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency. laying down covering fire as they converged on Elena's location. Lieutenant Marquez arrived first, his armor scorched and damaged. Behind him came Private Reeves and Corporal Santos. "This is bad, Captain," Marquez said, reloading his weapon. "The whole station's awake now. They're sealing bulkheads, cutting off escape routes. Then we make a new route," Elena said. She pulled up a schematic on her wrist display. "Power core is 3 levels down. There's a maintenance shaft that runs parallel. It'll be tight, but we can use it." They moved quickly, fighting through corridors that seemed to shrink around them. The salvors were everywhere now, organized and methodical. They weren't just guards. They were hunters, and they knew their territory. Elena's team reached the maintenance shaft and climbed down, their boots clanging against metal rungs. The shaft was dark and narrow, barely wide enough for their armor. Below they could hear the sound of fighting. They emerged on the lower level and immediately came under fire. Elena rolled behind a support column, her team spreading out to return fire. Ahead, she could see Team 2, pinned behind a blast door, surrounded by Salvor forces. "Cover me!" Elena shouted. She sprinted across the open space, bullets and energy blasts tearing through the air around her. She made it to Team 2's position and slid behind the blast door, breathing hard. "Captain," Lieutenant Okafor said, relief flooding her face. "We thought you left with the transport." "Not without you," Elena said. She looked at the team. 5 soldiers, all wounded, all running on fumes. "Can you move?" "We'll have to," Okafor said. She gestured to the power core behind them. "We planted the charges, but we can't arm them. The salvors disabled the remote triggers." Elena's blood ran cold. "Someone has to stay behind to set them manually." The implication hung in the air like a knife. Manual detonation meant no time to escape. It meant sacrifice. "I'll do it," Marquez said immediately. "No," Elena said. "I'm not losing anyone else." "Captain, with respect, we're already lost," Marquez said quietly. "Look around. We're surrounded, outnumbered, and out of time. The only way this mission succeeds is if that station goes down. And for that to happen, someone has to stay." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to find another way. But the logic was inescapable. They had come here to save lives and to send a message. If the station survived, the salvors would continue. More colonies would fall. More people would disappear into the dark. "There has to be another way," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. "There isn't," Okafor said. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "But we can still get you out, Captain. You need to survive this. You need to tell Earth what happened here." Before Elena could respond, the blast door behind them shuddered. The salvors were breaching. "Go!" Marquez shouted. "Now!" Elena hesitated for one agonizing second. Then she made the decision that would define the rest of her life. She grabbed Okafor and ran. Behind them, Marquez and the others opened fire, holding the line as Elena's group retreated. The sound of battle followed them through the corridors, growing fainter with each step. They reached an emergency airlock, one designed for evacuations. Elena forced it open and pulled Okafor inside. 2 others from Team 2 made it. 3 didn't. "Seal it," Elena ordered. The airlock closed. Through the small window, Elena could see the corridor beyond. It was empty now. "Quiet. Marquez, come in," Elena said into her comm. "Static." She tried again. "Marquez, do you read?" Nothing. Then the station shook. A deep, rumbling explosion that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The lights flickered and died. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red. "He did it," Okafor whispered. "The power core." "He detonated the charges." Elena closed her eyes. She could picture Marquez in those final moments, standing alone in the dark, his hand on the trigger. He had saved them all, and it had cost him everything. "We need to move," Elena said, her voice hollow. "The station is dying. We need to find a ship." They stumbled through the darkened corridors, the station groaning around them. Explosions echoed through the hull as secondary systems failed. The salvors were in chaos, scrambling to evacuate. Elena's group reached a small hangar bay. Inside, a single transport sat abandoned, its engines still warm. They boarded quickly, and Elena took the controls. "Everyone strapped in?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," came the tired replies. Elena launched the transport, pushing it through the hangar doors and into the void. Behind them, the station was breaking apart, huge sections tearing free and tumbling into the dark. Flames licked through the breaches, bright and terrible against the black. They had won. They had destroyed the Salvor's base and freed the captives. But the cost had been devastating. Elena stared at the dying station, her hands gripping the controls so hard they hurt. She thought about Marquez, about the soldiers who didn't make it out. She thought about the 15 colonies that had been lost before anyone noticed. "Captain," Okafor said quietly, "we got the data, all of it. Every buyer, every transaction. The whole network." Elena nodded slowly. The mission had succeeded. But success felt like ash in her mouth. "Send it to Fleet Command," Elena said. "Let them know what we found. Let them know what it cost." The transport moved away from the dying station, carrying the survivors toward safety. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they had lost something important. Something that could never be recovered. The transport drifted toward the rendezvous point in silence. Elena sat in the pilot's seat, staring at the stars. Behind her, Okafor and the other survivors rested, their bodies exhausted but their minds unable to sleep. They had all seen too much. "Captain, incoming transmission," Okafor said, breaking the quiet. "It's Admiral Konstantin." Elena straightened. "Put him through." The Admiral's face appeared on the small screen. He looked grim, but there was something else in his eyes. "Pride, maybe, or sorrow, Captain Voss," he said. "We received your data package. The Council is reviewing it now. What you found is bigger than we imagined." "How big?" Elena asked. 7 species, 12 major buyers, hundreds of transactions. The Salvors weren't just taking humans. They were part of a network that spans half the known galaxy. Slavery on an industrial scale. Konstantin paused. "Your mission exposed everything. The Council is preparing formal charges. We're taking this to the Galactic Assembly." Elena felt a flicker of something. Not satisfaction, not relief, just a grim sense of completion. "What about the captives we rescued?" she asked. "Safe," Konstantin said. "They're being debriefed and treated. Many are asking for you. They want to thank you." Elena shook her head slowly. "They shouldn't thank me. I lost half my team getting them out." "You saved hundreds of lives," Konstantin said firmly. "And you exposed a crime that's been happening for decades." "Don't diminish that. What happens now?" Elena asked. Konstantin's expression hardened. "Now we make sure this never happens again. The data you recovered includes coordinates for every buyer, every trading post, every species involved in the network. Earth is calling for a unified response. We're not just going after the Salvors. We're going after everyone who profited from this." Elena felt something stir in her chest. Not revenge. Something colder, more focused. "When do we start?" she asked. "As soon as you're ready," Konstantin said. "But Elena, you need to understand what this means. We're talking about operations across multiple sectors, involving species we've never engaged with before. Some of them are powerful. This won't be easy." "Nothing worth doing ever is," Elena said. Konstantin nodded slowly. "I'm authorizing the formation of a new task force, Operation Silent Justice. Its mission is to dismantle the trafficking network piece by piece. I want you to lead it." Elena looked at the screen, at the Admiral's weathered face. She thought about Marquez, about the soldiers who had died on that station. She thought about the families from Colony 7, about the 15 lost settlements, about the thousands of people who had disappeared into the dark. "I accept," Elena said. The transmission ended. Elena sat alone in the cockpit, the weight of command settling on her shoulders once more. But this time it felt different. This time she wasn't just defending. She was hunting. Over the next 3 months, Operation Silent Justice moved like a scalpel through the trafficking network. Elena's task force struck quickly and precisely, hitting trading posts and buyer locations with overwhelming force. They freed captives, destroyed facilities, and arrested everyone involved. But Elena's strategy went deeper than simple raids. She understood that the network thrived in darkness, in secrecy. So she brought it into the light. Every operation was documented. Every arrest was publicized. Every species involved was named. The Galactic Assembly convened emergency sessions as the evidence mounted. Trade agreements were suspended. Diplomatic relations fractured. The galaxy was forced to confront a horror it had ignored for too long. Some species cooperated, turning over their criminals and pledging reform. Others resisted, claiming sovereignty and tradition. Elena didn't care. The task force moved through them all, relentless and unyielding. 6 months after the destruction of the Salvor station, Elena stood before the Galactic Assembly. The chamber was vast, filled with representatives from dozens of species. They watched her with a mixture of fear and respect. "For years your silence allowed this to happen," Elena said, her voice echoing through the chamber. You knew humans were disappearing. You knew colonies were going dark, but you did nothing because it was convenient. Because it wasn't your people being taken. She paused, letting the words sink in. Earth will never forget what happened. And we will never allow it to happen again. Not to our people. Not to anyone's people. This assembly can either stand with us in ending this crime, or it can stand aside. But make no mistake. We will not stop. The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives called for sanctions against Earth. Others demanded cooperation. The arguments raged for hours, but in the end, the assembly voted. A new treaty was signed, creating the first galactic law against trafficking. Enforcement mechanisms were established, and Earth was given a permanent seat on the Security Council. It wasn't perfect. There were still criminals out there, still people suffering. But the network had been shattered. The message had been sent. Elena returned to her ship, exhausted but resolute. She found Okafor waiting for her in the command center. How does it feel? Okafor asked. To change the galaxy? Elena thought about that question. She thought about the lives saved, the justice delivered, the systems rebuilt. But she also thought about the lives lost. About Marquez and the others who had died on that station. It feels necessary, Elena said finally. Not good, not satisfying, just necessary. Okafor nodded, understanding in her eyes. Elena walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, families were being reunited. Former captives were returning home. The galaxy was a little bit safer, a little bit more just, but the cost had been high. And Elena knew she would carry that cost for the rest of her life. Captain, Okafor said quietly, there's a memorial service tomorrow. For everyone we lost. Will you speak? Elena closed her eyes. Yes, she said. They deserve to be remembered. That night, Elena sat alone in her quarters and wrote the names of every soldier who had died during Operation Retrieval. She wrote them carefully, committing each one to memory. These were the people who had made the final move, who had turned the tide not with strategy or intelligence, but with sacrifice. The next day, she stood before a crowd of survivors, soldiers, and families. She spoke about courage and duty. She spoke about the price of justice and the weight of command. And she spoke the names of the fallen, each one a reminder of what had been lost and what had been gained. When she finished, the crowd was silent. Then slowly they began to stand. One by one, they rose in respect, in gratitude, in sorrow. Elena looked out at them, at the faces of the saved and the faces of the grieving. This was the true victory, not the destruction of the salvers, not the dismantling of the network, but the knowledge that when the helpless were targeted, Earth had come. And Earth had shown no mercy to those who preyed on the weak. Years later, when historians wrote about the Salvor War, they would focus on the tactics and the treaties. But Elena knew the truth. The war had been won not in the battles or the negotiations, but in a single decision. The decision to never again stand by while innocent people suffered. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity was not easy prey, and those who mistook kindness for weakness would face the full weight of Earth's wrath. Elena Voss returned to her ship, to her duty, to the endless watch over the frontier. The stars stretched before her, vast and cold. But they were a little bit safer now, because Earth had shown the galaxy something important, something that would echo across the stars for generations, mercy for the helpless, justice for the guilty, and no quarter for those who hunted the innocent. The message was clear, never again.